A little bit of background. I, a 23-year-old female, was 20 at the time, and I had moved in with my uncle in San Antonio, with the agreement that I didn't have to pay rent, as long as I helped him out with chores and with my cousins. I got a job at a super-known coffee chain downtown, close to the touristy part of the area. We had a lot of regulars and a lot of homeless coming in and out. I felt relatively safe though because I got to know the people there, and it was almost always a lot of foot traffic. I used to even take walks after work in the area, especially since I was super close to the Riverwalk. Skip to a couple months into the job and I was friends with everybody that I worked with. We were all super close. On this particular day, it was one of my coworkers' last day. There were about 3 guys who had been in there almost all morning. They hadn't bought anything and we were just hanging out, which was not unusual for my location. On my break, I decided to walk down to a nearby drugstore so that I could get a farewell card and maybe a small gift for my coworker. I walked out and put my earphones in, and before I could press play, I heard the door open behind me and footsteps following behind. Whoever it was caught up to me and started walking beside me, matching my pace exactly. I turned to look and it was one of the guys that had been in there all morning. He was a bit taller than me and he reminded me a lot of Lakeith Stanfield. He tried to ask for my number and I kindly told him no. He persisted and I, with a short temper, told him to screw off. He stopped and stared at me in surprise, as I don't look like somebody who speaks up or it would be rude. He stood there as I walked away, and by the time that I went back, they were gone. I proceeded to tell my coworkers about the encounter, and we all laughed it off. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. Every shift after that, he would already be there just hanging out, or he would walk in mid-shift, sometimes with somebody else or sometimes by himself. I assumed he was just another homeless person, because how else was he always able to be around? My shifts were sporadic. Sometimes I opened some days, other days I closed, and sometimes I worked mid, but it didn't matter. He was always there. At that point, I started to feel paranoid. I would always catch him staring in my direction. He never ordered anything, never talked to me, and luckily he wouldn't follow me. He would just sit there watching me. I started mentioning it to my coworkers and they were noticing it too. One of my team leaders would help me out by sending me to wash dishes in the back or to go organize the cooler. My coworkers would also try to place themselves and try and block me from his view. I started feeling uncomfortable at work. Sometimes when I closed, a coworker would walk me to my car before heading home themselves. Or if I didn't close, they would walk me to my car and turn around and head back to work. And then one day, he was there again just staring. I was working the register that day, and he walked up and ordered a water. I asked for his name for his order. I now had his first name just in case, and he took his water and he sat down. I had mentioned him to my manager, but at this point, he hadn't really done anything that we could do beside note it in the manager book. The next day, I worked with my manager. It was him, 2 other coworkers, and me. I told them that I had to go to the bathroom really quick. There were 2 bathrooms right next to each other, but sort of hidden from the coffee bar and the register, and they weren't gender specific. I walked around the bar to the lobby area. I had to pass his table and walk down the lobby to get to the bathroom. I noticed him get up before going inside the bathroom. I sat down to do my business when the door rattled. I shouted out that it was occupied, but whoever it was kept rattling the door until I had finished. When I opened the door, no one was there, and walking back, I noticed him adjusting back into his chair. I was super freaked out and I told my boss. He couldn't tell him anything because we had no proof that it was him. Later that shift, he got up and picked up a coffee from the pickup area. My boss assumed that he had ordered it and let him take it. I told him that it wasn't and that it wasn't even his name. My boss used this as an opportunity to tell him if he does something like that again, he can't come back. The man apologized and actually stuck to the rules every day after that. He went back to just watching me. Cut to Valentine's Day. One of my team leaders and I would be scheduled to work certain Thursdays after close to deep clean the store, and we would stay until about 1 in the morning. This happened to be one of those Thursdays. We were almost done and I had to clean the bathrooms as one of the last chores. I finished, and as I walked out of the bathroom, I saw him peeking in with both hands pressed to the window, eyes wide and just staring at me with this super intense look. I froze for a second, just staring back. I noticed on one of his palms that is pressed to the window, there is a purple foam heart. He doesn't move at all. I freak out and I go back into the bathroom. I shout, Hannah, he's here, he's back." She barely hears me through the music that we were blasting. Hannah was the team lead who would help hide me from him, so she knew the huge fear that I had towards him. She walked towards the bathroom shouting back, "What are you saying? What's going on?" As soon as she gets close, she sees him. I told her again, "He's here, he's watching me." She started shouting through the window, "You need to leave. If you don't leave, we're calling the cops." I step out a little to see if he'll leave, and he's ignoring her, and his eyes were fixated in my direction. I step back into the bathroom, and my lead continues to shout at him to leave and threatens him with the police. About 5 minutes pass, and he realizes that I'm not stepping out until he leaves, so he does. The next day, my lead and I told my manager that I wanted to file a police report. He tells me no to wait until he talks to his boss. He shows up again that day, but I was only there to talk to my manager and leave right after. When I got home, a friend convinced me to just call the police. So I text my boss that I don't care what he or his boss says, and that I'm scared and that I'm gonna file a report. I dial 911 and I tell them a summarized version, and they tell me that they're going to send someone to where I live to take the official report. The 2 officers were very nice and supportive. I told them my whole story and how my boss didn't feel the need to get cops involved since I wasn't harmed. The officers told me that I should have called right away, and they defended me, saying that they could get him for harassment. I thank them, and they tell me that if he shows up, to call them again so they can take him in for trespassing and harassing. I think that day my manager banned him and warned him because he never showed up in the coffee shop again. A few months later, when I was comfortable again with downtown, I went out with some friends to walk around. We were close to where I worked, and as we rounded a corner, I saw him, and so I ducked into a little corner store and my friends followed. I told them that I saw him and they kept an eye out. Once he was out of view, we left the store, and that was the last time that I saw him. It's Friday night, and I had just gotten out of school and I had to go straight to work. I get to work and work for about 4 hours. It was a half shift tonight. And my boss, who's also my aunt, tells me that we need more spoons for tomorrow's event. We sell ice cream, and these events have like 5,000 plus people at them. I say okay on that. I'll go and grab them on my way home. The only store open with heavy-duty spoons is all the way on the other side of town, and I still wanted to go meet up with some friends and mess around. I decided to take the faster but more sketchy way around the outskirts of town. I live in a weather bipolar state. It snowed last night, but I figured the roads would be fine enough even if they weren't plowed. I take off to the store, and the first 5 minutes go by and nothing's wrong. I haven't seen a single car or any buildings the entire time. But keep in mind it's approaching 9 p.m. and I'm on the outskirts of town. And no one really takes this way in case they really have to. All of a sudden I see something out of the corner of my eye, and it looks like a man. Roughly 5'8", I would say, wearing shorts, a t-shirt, and a backwards hat. He's in the ditch and walking in the snow when it's about 10 degrees outside. My first thought is to pull over, but I'm on my phone with my mom at the time and she warns me to not, as some things have happened before in this town. For example, a couple years ago, a college girl was kidnapped and found dead, rolled up in a rug in 2014. I consider stopping, but for some reason I tell myself not to. I wasn't really worried about anything. I'm a young dude driving a big pickup truck. The last type of person anybody would want to harm, right? I passed the man, going about 40 miles per hour. Like I said, the roads aren't the best. I drive not even 500 feet past him, and immediately, a car that I did not see at all before turns on and pulls out of a field entrance off the road and starts to follow me. At first, I thought it was focused on the man in the ditch and I didn't see a road, and that's where they came from. But I later found out that there was not a road there. Now again, I'm not super worried. I watched my fair share of crime movies and read plenty of stories in the sub, and I didn't feel like it was a threat yet. I started to approach the town again and had to take some turns to get where I'm going. I turn left, the car turns left. I turn right, the car turns right. I go around a roundabout and skip my turn and go twice, as no one else was there, and the car follows. At this point, I start to worry a little bit, but maybe they just need to go to the store as well. I then pull up to a stop sign. I wasn't on the best side of town either, may I add, and I turn without my turn signal on. The car still follows. Now at this point, I should have went straight to the police station, but I still didn't think much of it. I'm only about 2 miles from the store where plenty of people will be. I take a few more turns and the car continues to follow me. I completely blew a stop sign at a non-busy intersection, and the car does a quick stop and go and catches up. At this point, I'm 2 turns to the store, so I'm not still worried. I turn into the store and the car turns also. The store also has a gas station, so I pulled there first to act like I was getting gas. The car sits off to the side of the road, in between the gas station and the store, and just sits there. I wait about 10 minutes and the car doesn't move. At this point, I start to get worried. I'm a young kid alone at night near the bad side of town. I call my friends I'm supposed to meet up with later on, and give them the license plate for worst case scenario, and then I take off to the store. I cross the streets and the car comes straight behind me. I'm freaking out on the phone, not knowing if I should call the cops or not. I go and park as close as possible to the store, and the car parks 3 rows behind me and a couple down. It's getting late at this point and the store is closing soon. There's only a couple of others in the lot. I turn my truck back on and go park on the complete opposite side of the lot, get out, and I completely bolt inside of the store. I'm not super overweight, but I'm not skinny either. I'm about 6'1" and 200 pounds. Who would want to do anything with me? I get the spoons and take my time in the store. I go to call my friends to walk back outside, and my phone is dead. I look out of the sliding glass doors and suddenly, there's a white van next to my driver's side. It looks like there's no one in it, but the back windows are covered and it's still running. That's a big red flag. I run to customer service and explain everything, but they think that I'm some young kid just messing around. At the time, I didn't see the original car that followed me, but there was no way I was going outside with that van next to my truck. After waiting what seemed like hours, it was probably about 30 minutes, the van pulls forward, and the original car appears from the side of the building. You can see from the in-store Starbucks window they talked, and both drove off. I wait another 10 minutes and dash outside. I speed to my friend's house, and when I get there, I park in his garage. My one buddy asked why there is a big orange mark on my tire, and my heart begins to sink. When I was inside, the follow car must have marked my tire. After inspecting the rest of the truck, we found a small pipe dropped in the bed of my truck surrounded by snow. It was about 2 inches wide and I would say about 18 inches long, wrapped in duct tape, and it was not mine. I was alone, with no phone and scared, in a part of town that I'm not familiar with. I try to laugh it off, but now that everyone's asleep, I can't help but think what would have happened if I had walked outside. I've always been sort of ego-boosted in the fact that I'm a chubby fat dude that no one would want to mess with. But after tonight, I realized that anyone can be targeted. It was November of 2017, and this was a time of my life when I severely struggled with alcoholism and drug addiction, as many in the town that I lived do. So please judge my decisions knowing that. Me and my friend were skint most of the time but used to frequent a pub. Now this particular pub had a bad reputation but had recently been taken over by a new landlord who would begin to turn it around. It had an okay crowd, the usual for the type of the working area. The Imperial. On this particular evening, I had to come in at about 50 pounds in cash, so I called my mate and before long we were hitting the town. We started in this particular pub that we'll call the Imperial. I rocked up to the bar and ordered 2 drinks for me and my friend. As I did, I noticed a very scruffy-looking woman dressed in disheveled clothing. Naturally, I ignored it and sat down. About an hour went by before my pal noticed the scruffy-looking middle-aged woman was lurking about 3 meters behind us, just staring at us. This gave us the fear and we decided to go out and smoke a cigarette. We headed outside, donned our hats and coats and smoked 2 cigarettes each, before returning to see the woman sat at our table. This wasn't a problem for us. We could just get to another table. But as we walked over, she stood up and returned to her original position, so we took our old table back. Upon sitting down, I see the woman begin to approach the table. She stands behind him and starts touching his shoulder. He turns around and asks, "What are you doing?" She swiftly replies in a very high-pitched voice, "Can I please sit here?" This was when I realized that my friend had completely misheard the question. He believed she had said, "Can I have a ciggy?" So he replied with, "Yeah, sure." She dropped herself down in the seat next to her. It was really awkward in this new formed threesome. What made it worse is that she just maintained the same overbearing smile, not moving at all. It was with all this that I presumed she may be mentally challenged. My cousins have a similar issue, so I decided to be nice and involved her for a little while. After all, she seemed harmless. This was a mistake. After trying to involve her in the conversation with no luck, I signaled to my friend to go for a cigarette, and she stayed at the table. Outside, me and my friend talked about how awkward it was, and how we wanted to leave and decided to leave the back way without her seeing us. It was at this moment that I realized I had left my phone at the table. I walked over to the table, and as she saw me coming back, she grabbed my phone. Playing dumb, I said, "Hey, thanks for your company tonight, but I have to go. You haven't seen my phone, have you?" After saying this, her face changed and the mood took a dark turn. I could feel something was brewing, although her face was still ecstatically smiling. "Why are you leaving? There's no reason to," she said while making the creepiest eye contact I had seen in my entire life. "You can have it for a kiss," she said as she held up my phone. I thought fast and snatched it out of her hand before storming off fast out the door and meeting my friend outside. I was shook and told him to walk fast. Road to the Brunswick. The road outside the Imperial was long and straight, and you can basically see it from one end to the other. While we're walking fast for a while before slowing down and then stopping to light a cigarette. While we're stopped, we noticed the silhouette of what appeared to be this woman coming towards us at a quick pace. Frightened, we took a corner and took the back streets and alleys, turning at every opportunity that we could. There was no chance she could have followed us, and we even waited to see if she was still coming. After 10 minutes, we started walking to a smaller pub called the Brunswick. We walked and talked about the strangeness of her, but we really forgot about it pretty fast. Upon arriving there, we scanned the room for her just in case and headed to the bar area. Got more drinks and we stayed at the bar. An hour passed and we were both quite drunk, so we decided to leave. This, and I cannot stress this enough, was a huge mistake. We walked outside and around the corner when, perhaps by coincidence, we bumped into her again. She began screaming things about how I should love her and how she had done so much for me. Completely taken by surprise and shock, I watched her run towards me. My friend ran back and watched in horror as she grabbed me and began licking and spitting on my face while she bear hugged me. I managed to slip out of her grip and sprint off onto the main road. Needless to say, I got very drunk that night.